All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Abundance Formula podcast. Sorry, I'm a little sweaty this morning for those of you on YouTube. It just worked out this week that this podcast was going to need to be recorded early in the morning just based on my schedule and after my cardio. And we will all cross our fingers that please that Sailor, our daughter, will sleep and not wake up early and come looking for me. If so, we'll see. We'll see what kind of mood she's in. Sometimes she'll sit here quietly with me. Sometimes she'll go straight to the bed and go to my room to try to sleep and may just lay down with my husband. So we'll see. So we're going to try to get through this because we are on pillar number 3 today, you guys. So if you're new to tuning in, we're on a mini series called Strong Summer. Pillar number 1 was hitting your hydration goals. Pillar number 2 was nutrition, your calorie goals. And then number 3 is your protein goals. So that's what's next. And protein is so important. I know I've alluded to it throughout the whole first 2 pillars because it's that important. And so we're going to dig deep into it today. Today's going to be another very informational one, information-full one. So feel free to listen to this a couple times or to pause right now and grab something to write with, because it will be helpful for you to know some of these things, or just to remind yourself. You may not even need to write some of these things down, but there's important factors about this to remember. I think it's going to be good for people who are seasoned to lifting weights, eating healthy, this process of wanting to build and maintain muscle and recover, that kind of stuff. I think there'll be new information that you haven't thought about. And then, of course, for beginners, all of this is going to be new and super important to know. So kind of the outline of what we're going to do today is we're going to go through why protein is so important, both for first, just general health, and then for 2, longevity and aging, because a lot of people don't know how important it is for aging. And a lot of people are now starting to realize, even in the nutrition world and some of these areas, which are very hard to change over time, because surprisingly, even nutrition can get nutrition, or as we know, the health industry, all that stuff can get kind of political. I heard a doctor who I really love to follow, she's kind of one of those a little bit polarizing, not going to lie. Her name's Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. I love following her for kind of getting just really authentic, in my mind, updates on the studies, because she's knee deep in all of those as a physician, and especially she specializes in women. But she'll shoot you straight. I just, because she's so polarizing, I trust more what she says, and of course, look into the things that she says more for myself as well. But she said something like, just in general, our health systems they're trained to help you get better from being sick, but not necessarily to stay well, if that makes sense. And that's not necessarily in a bad way. It's just like we've trained to handle the illnesses once you've acquired them, as opposed to had spent our time researching how to prevent them in the first place. But now we're reaching a phase of life where people are very interested in that. And so that's what a lot of the latest studies have been on. And protein has been one of those key pillars that they have found in helping with bone density, fighting illness, all these different things that we'll get into a little bit later. So we're going to talk about why it's important for general health, and then longevity as we age. And then lastly, we'll bust some classic protein myths that I think will help a lot of you who have purposefully not eaten too much protein because you've heard some of these myths and you didn't know that they were not true and they were not study-based, research solidified. So to help clear some of those worries up for you, so that you can really move forward with this pillar. So let's just start out. I know I've mentioned on these last couple episodes, protein, of course, is super important for building muscle growth, recovery, maintenance, whether you're in a calorie, or especially if you're in a calorie deficit, trying to lose some fat as well, but you want to keep muscle and not lose that as you're burning the fat off. Super important to have a high protein intake so that you can burn the fat, but not lose the muscle you have. And we want to gain more muscle. And I'm going to kind of coincide with telling you why protein is important for general health and longevity, but specifically also muscle building, because it's important even for people who aren't wanting to be doing some athletic endeavor or care about it as an aesthetic, you know what I mean? So also specifically muscle building. But so especially if you're in a deficit, we really want to make sure we're hitting that 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And you can start out with whatever your, especially if you're in a weight loss journey, whatever your goal body weight is. Because like I've said on the past couple episodes, most people don't eat enough protein. And in fact, studies have shown that according to, what was it? One of the indexes, there's a few different indexes. I did write it down because it was very interesting. Give me 1 second. Okay. The healthy eating index. So 45% of Americans do not eat enough protein according to the healthy eating index, which that's even based off of the RDA, which is a very low number. And that number was established. It's just another scale, basically, that the health industry has looked to as this measure of, quote, health. But it's 40 years old. It's not been changed in 40 years. And as any of us could say, we've all gained so much more knowledge about how to optimize our health, even with the technologies that we have since then. So that number really needs to be updated, because based on that number, that percentage is even high, like what it should be. If we compared to if the RDA got up to what it should be, then that percentage would probably be higher. So bare minimum, 45% of Americans already don't get in enough protein. So especially if then you're trying to be in this calorie deficit, you need a lot. So aiming for 1 gram of protein per your goal pound of body weight would be a great start. So say I was using the example of just me as a person, not that this is my goal, but I'm saying just me. So if I weigh 130 pounds, but I wanted to weigh 120, then I would at the bare minimum want to shoot for getting 120 grams of protein in per day, but really more, especially in weightlifting and doing cardio movement, chasing around busy kids. I have active jobs. So like really you want even more. And the studies have even shown that that would be considered a moderate protein intake at this point. High, and this would not be bad and is even recommended as you get older to double that if you even could, which is so hard for even would be hard for me to do. But just based on the information that they've gathered, like if that could be achieved, that would be great. They have found that would not be a bad thing for you. So, but bare minimum, we're going to start with 1 gram of protein per pound of goal body weight. And if you can get it for what your current body weight is, even if you're trying to lose weight, if you weigh 130, if you can get in 130, go for it. You know what I mean? If you can get in 140, go for it, right? So, but minimum your goal body weight. So that would be to help you even in muscle, your calorie surplus. That will be great. That's going to feed the muscle. And even in maintenance mode, that's going to help. So it's needed. Now, the thing that people don't realize, they're like, okay, I already knew that you need protein to build muscle, to maintain it, and for recovery. But what people don't know is how much, like truly based on internal studied measures. So the body actually needs and this is on average, like 250 to 300 grams of protein per day for repair activities and maintenance for protein turnover within the body. And of course, this number increases as we age because it gets harder for our body to do that as we age, harder for it to hang on to protein as we age. So that's how much it needs for just the internal activities. So it needs a lot. And then on top of that, we're being active and busy people. You need the protein. Okay. So a lot of people freak out, which I'll bust this myth later, of the rumors that got started of like, oh, if you eat too much protein, it's going to be bad for your organs, your liver, all that stuff. No studies show that. In fact, they've shown the opposite. And again, your body's using so much of this internally. It's not like you just have this excess. Like we don't just have this excess. We are not getting enough for the functions to optimize. So many people are starting to realize that. And that's why people are upping their protein, because they're wanting, especially the goal of longevity. So that's something I think even seasoned people wouldn't have known, is that, yes, of course you need it for building muscle and stuff, but this is how much your internal system is using. So thus even more so why you need at least that 1 gram per pound. So here's the next thing protein does. It helps to boost metabolism. I think I've mentioned this in the previous 2 pillars, but this is what's kind of neat about why it does that. So protein has the highest thermic effect of all the macronutrients, so between fat and carbs. This means that your body burns more calories to digest it, 20 to 30% of the protein calories to burn that versus 5 to 10% for carbs. So it takes more work for your body to burn it, which is a good thing because that is like a workout for your metabolism. So it keeps that metabolism awake. It keeps that fire going. And so that's what's really good about that. So more muscle also then, so when you've built some more muscle, it increases then your resting metabolism because it takes more work to support that muscle. So that means you burn more calories even when you're at rest. And so that's why, especially with a weight loss routine or a recomposition of your body goal, it's really essential and amazing to add resistance training into that, because not just cardio activities, but resistance training to focus on all the different muscle groups so that we can build that resting metabolism so you can get double the benefits. You can burn more calories digesting the protein. You can burn more calories because of true calorie output through your exercise modalities and your day-to-day activities, and we can increase it when you're at rest. That's winning in all the areas that'll get you towards your goal the fastest. And again, those are all healthy processes to be promoting your body to do. The other neat little trick with higher protein intake is that it increases satiety. It helps you feel full longer. And what a lot of people don't know is that high protein meals actually help regulate hunger hormones. So this means it helps you keep your cravings in check. So that's why a lot of people are finding now, especially if you can have your first meal of the day, breakfast, be high of your meals, the highest in protein, it's going to really help steer your brain in the right direction, because it's going to make sure it's satisfied. So it really has the right lens to look at the day properly, in the sense of, are you actually hungry or are you just craving something? And as we'll get into in a minute, well, we might as well just go ahead into the next protein benefit, is that it does support your mental focus and your energy. So so what people don't realize is, like, amino acids are not, protein is amino acids. There are like 20 different ones. So when we're saying protein, we're not just talking about one thing. There's 20 different amino acids, and they all are working on different things. So there's different amino acids that are needed for neurotransmitters that are directly related to your mood, your focus, your energy, and they're especially important when you're in a calorie deficit. So it's not woo-woo when we're saying having high enough protein will help stave your cravings and enhance your willpower, because it literally is directly related to those neurotransmitters that do those things. So when you're actually in a deficit in that area, you don't have the support to make better judgments. And it's like it's a real thing. And so it's like having just enhanced brain fog. You're trying to, think of the right answer on your test, and you're just trying to summon everything you have to gain clarity, but you can only do so well. Or if you're running on no sleep, these are things that protein, as shocking as it may seem to people, getting enough is really going to decrease. And I've always told my clients this: if you aren't getting it, like when they're saying they're craving a ton of things, then what I'm checking through is making sure, like, are you hitting your protein goal? And are you hitting your calorie goal? And are you hitting your water goal? Which is why I've made these very simple pillars, because if you are, those should massively decrease. Not that they won't exist, but they should massively decrease. And then when you get to those, you should be a lot more equipped to be like, this is just a habit that I'm having to beat out at this point. And you're not as emotional, and it's easier to beat out that habit because you're not as emotionally invested in it, because you honestly have a better harness on your mind, and you honestly feel better physically in your body. So your body's not telling you, it talks to you in a different way. When your body is truly nutritionally supported, then innately inside your body's not like, we are desperate for energy. Smart. It knows that it gets very fast energy from high sugar items, high carb, high fat, right? It's looking for those energy macronutrients, and it wants it fast, which typically are the less healthy items. And it makes your body want to go for the junk food or whatever's just fast, easy, and available, because it's desperate for energy. But if you truly have those energy stores filled, then you're not coming from as desperate of a mindset. And as simple as that may sound, people are shocked when they truly are hitting those numbers we've talked about, how much easier it is for them to break the just bad habit parts of their routine, because they have enough and their body knows that, and you're not having to convince it. You're like, no, you don't need that. But it's like, no, we really do. Like, we have no calories in our body. We're on 1,200 calories or 1,000 calories, and we're exercising ourselves to death, and we're eating no carbs and no fats, and we're low on protein and low on, like, we're dehydrated. Your body's like, no, you're not smart. we need stuff and we need it now. And that's why this becomes such a battle against the cravings, because you are in a deficit and it's smart and it knows you need something, and you do. You just need it from healthy things, and you need to get ahead of it so that, and get in a better routine so that you don't run into this problem. So that's something that's really important. Mental focus and energy, but truly on a neurotransmitter level. It's not just a woo-woo thing, oh, it helps with mental, and like, no, there's neurotransmitters in your body that need this. Same thing for aiding in recovery and performance. It's essential for repairing tissues. And this is, of course, key if you're an athlete or you're training for a specific thing, but even for longevity, as we'll get into. Protein also helps to promote hormone and immunity health. So protein's necessary for making specific enzymes, hormones, and immune system components. And so that's really important to know. A lot of people, again, even if you're seasoned, don't know that. So again, even seasoned people don't always think about protein in the sense of its non-surface level things such as muscle. They know it's an amino acid as the building block of muscle. That's very basic, and so they want to build muscle. A lot of people might know it boosts metabolism and some of those things, makes you feel full longer. They may even know some of those things, but we don't often think about their deeper thing, that they affect neurotransmitters, that they're precursors for a lot of these immune responses our body has, and our hormones and releases of different things. So that's really important to think about, especially when you again consider how much your body's doing internally and needs protein for these functions, and you know that you're not getting enough. So hopefully by the end of this podcast, you're going to be very motivated to make sure you're getting that at least 1 gram per pound of body weight, because it is vital to these internal things that are truly for long-term health, like our hormone balance and fighting off illnesses, recovering from illnesses, and of course, injury prevention and things like that. So this is the perfect segue into why protein is key for longevity and the aging process, and just trying to set our bodies up with the best armor that we can for the future, and in our long-term health, to be able to stay independent longer, and to just have better quality of life. So first, it helps with preventing muscle loss, which is a condition called sarcopenia that happens, and we actually start to lose muscle mass by the age of 30. And of course, that speeds up after the age of 60. So that's why not too long ago, they finally started being promoting resistance training for women, because they were really finding that it helped reduce osteoporosis, which is more prominent in women, plus a bunch of other things. And so again, they're really starting to make this connection between building muscle, which requires even more protein, and longevity and prevention of muscle loss, which cascades into other things that are negative for us as we age. So higher protein intake does slow the process of muscle loss, and it helps with just, again, general maintenance, especially combined with resistance training. So then the other interesting thing is that aging bodies become less efficient at using protein, which is why we need more. It's called anabolic resistance. And the older bodies require more protein to stimulate the same levels of protein synthesis. So it just to stimulate protein synthesis. There's a lot of words here that get you tongue-tied. It's too early in the morning. Okay. To stimulate protein synthesis. This is so hard. Y'all say this 10 times. Okay. So older bodies require more protein to stimulate the same level of muscle protein synthesis. And so that's why this 1 gram of protein is important to implement as soon as we can, because this is going to really help us to hold on to that muscle. And again, we'll have extra so that as our body doesn't actually uptake it as easily, we've got more to work with. So it also, again, as we know, we get older. I'm only 35, and when you're tired, you feel this. We want to support our brain health and our cognition. And so protein does support brain health and those neurotransmitters. So they provide the amino acids that are precursors for dopamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine. These are all neurotransmitters that are important for memory, mood, and then focus and cognitive longevity. I don't sound like I have that right now, but I will say it's like 6 a.m. So, and Sailor did wake up. I had to take a very brief hiatus, cue her up with a show. So again, we'll cross our fingers that she stays in there. So long term, we want to support our brain and maintaining as much as it can. And protein is a key precursor for that. Again, protein is not just one thing. It's a bunch of different amino acids that have a bunch of different jobs and are precursors for a bunch of different things. So another thing that's helpful as we age is, of course, it enhances our metabolic health and disease prevention. So higher protein intake helps a few things. It helps regulate our blood sugar. It helps reduce visceral fat. It helps support us in staying at healthy weight and body composition. And so all those things lower our risk for very common things, especially here in the South, like type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and osteoporosis. And these are all really big ones that affect elderly. And especially, again, they're finding so much of this osteoporosis because, as we'll get into in just a second, like a simple fall can change everything when you get older. If you like, I forget what it was when I was in one of my practitioner continuing educations. It was a couple years ago because we were talking about hip orthoses, and like the if somebody fell and broke their hip, depending on their age, hip fractures up to the percentage of death for elderly by a huge percentage. And so just the talk was about preventing the brittleness of bones and stuff. So again, anything that we can do to support the density of our bones and to strengthen them is going to be so huge later in life. So protein is key in that. Protein is important for the recovery of illness and injury. I've mentioned that a little bit earlier, but as we age, recovery takes longer. So it's more important to support our bodies with enough protein so that it can have that for the tissue repair, resilience in our immunity, and reducing the time spent in a deconditioned state. Because if you can't recover as fast, you're just going to decondition faster. So they're also looking at new studies, which is kind of cool, on like intramuscular fat and how it's paired with people recovering from ailments faster. Like they definitely been comparing like subcutaneous fat, individuals that have less are in a healthy place there recover better, but they're finding even more links. Now they're doing more studies now to see just basically which means basically the better quality of their muscle, how well they're recovering or fighting off ailments. And the studies they've done so far, it's shown that it's better. So then the last couple of things for just as far as longevity aging, these we probably all kind of know. Of course, since protein supports muscle strength and mobility, this is important for us as we age because we need better balance, we need better mobility. This helps with fall prevention and fuel strength, even from getting up from the ground. Just helping us to be able to do our own activities of daily living longer is very healthy for our bodies and very helpful for our mental state and our confidence. It's helpful for our family members. So just general strength and mobility is huge for us to increase and keep up with as a really steady habit as we age, and having enough protein so that can actually be worth as much as possible. And so, as I already said, it helps reduce our risk for frailty and falling and things like that. So let's get to busting some fun protein classic myths now. All right, so myth number 1, high protein is bad for your kidneys or your liver. So in reality, in healthy people, there's no evidence that high protein diets harm the kidneys at all. So if healthy kidneys are not damaged, or they're not damaged by high protein intake, if people just don't have healthy kidneys in the first place, which is unrelated to protein, then obviously, and that's how this myth got started. Is the study that came out was on people who didn't have healthy kidneys already. So that just kind of got people freaked out. But there is zero evidence, zero studies that show that protein high intake affects negatively the kidney or livers. And in fact, it has shown the opposite. Like I said, it's shown that people actually recover faster and their organ health is better. So no studies to prove that. And the one study that they did do wasn't even on healthy subjects. So was moot. So myth number 2, high protein leaches calcium from bones. The reality is protein actually increases bone health. Higher protein intake increases calcium absorption. So that supports muscle strength and lowers the fracture risks. They found this in athletes. They found this in older people. There's plenty of studies done on that. So the long-term studies actually show that people who eat more protein have better bone density. So any of the studies that were done in the past were looking for just stuff being lost, but they weren't looking at the absorption rate, that the absorption rate was way higher when people had higher protein intakes. So the next myth, this one, I haven't heard this one as much, but I figured we'd throw it on here because it is one I've heard, but just not very much, is that too much protein turns into fat. Your body is highly inefficient at converting protein into fat. When we've talked about those macronutrients, again, carbs and fats are the number one go-to that your body wants to pull for energy. And those are the categories of too high. That's where it's going to more easily then store it into fat, because fat is a really great energy source. So your body's protein is built, like your body's built to use protein macronutrient for muscle repair, hormone production, enzymes, neurotransmitters. It's not built for pulling that and turning that into fat. That's just not how it was created in us to be utilized first. So if you're not getting what you need in those other areas, carbs and fats, and you're on Naked and Afraid and you're like emaciated and all things, of course, if it has no other option, it will try its best, but it is not efficient at doing that. So again, as far as studies go, that doesn't have study to support that, even in a calorie surplus, that your body would turn protein into stored body fat. Next myth, this one I hear a lot, and this is a good one for you to hear, especially seasoned people, because as a seasoned person, this is something I'd heard before, that your body can only absorb 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. So here's the thing. That number refers to the maximum amount used for muscle protein synthesis at one time. But your body still digests and uses the protein for other things. So again, that's where people are thinking of it in just a one mindset thing, like, oh, I'm going to eat protein post workout, and it all has to go to my muscles because that's the only goal. That's not the only goal. That is a goal, right? But so let that 20 to 30 go to the actual protein synthesis for that workout, but the rest of that protein, again, is fueling your organs, your hormones, your hair, your skin, your nails, and your immune repair. So eating extra 40 to 60 grams or however much you can fit in is still valuable. It's just being used in different ways. So I think we get too narrow-minded on thinking, oh, it's pointless if I eat more than that. It is absolutely not pointless. Again, this is part of how we've started eating way too little protein, because we just think it as if we're thinking it just isn't working in other places. It's only for building muscle related to weightlifting. And I don't know if that just got started because, when bodybuilding became in the media and stuff like that, that people just like normal healthy people just associated them with protein for muscle building equals bodybuilding. And so they started thinking, well, I don't want to be a bodybuilder, so that protein's excess quote protein's not going to be used then. And that's just not the thing. Like, protein has always been a massively important macronutrient for our internal health, as we've discussed. So next myth, high protein diets are just for bodybuilders. No. So as we've discussed already, it's essential for everyone, especially women in perimenopause, menopause, adults that are just trying to stay independent as they age, busy parents to manage cravings, to stay healthy, keep their blood pressure down, keep their cholesterol down, keep their heart health good. Anyone trying to lose fat or preserve their muscle, like, it's good for everyone. So not just for bodybuilders. Next myth, this is the last one. You don't need protein if you're not lifting weights. No, this is not true. As we just discussed, you need protein for even repairing your daily wear and tear from whatever your job is, from just doing chores around the house. You need it for fueling your brain and neurotransmitters. You need it for supporting your hormones and your enzymes and keeping full and stable throughout the day. Like, again, if we even just focus on how, like, you may not feel like you're super active and busy in your physical day to day. Maybe you're like, I don't do the yard work. I have a house cleaner. I literally sit and watch TV. Well, your body's busy inside. Your body is doing something inside. Yes, if you got up and were more active, it would be even more busy inside. But there is a lot of activity happening inside our bodies that we're blessed to not have to think about if you're healthy. Not have to think about breathing, not to have to think about digesting, not have to think about all these things. But they're happening regardless. So let's not be naive and think that we have to be lifting weights, although that is best for us long term. Even if you're very inactive, your internal body is active doing things, and it needs that protein to do that healthfully and keep you feeling good in your life. So, all right, that's the last of the myths. So basically, in conclusion, muscle building is about building strength. It's not just about aesthetics or any of that stuff. That may be motivating for some people, but really, all of us will admit, like it's for long term, like a healthy approach to the goal of building muscle is that you really want to build strength long term, internally, externally, and that we want to just create the best quality of life for ourselves and our family to be able to show up the best that we can to fulfill our purpose and to just live a good life for ourselves that we're proud of. So that is the goal. And I also wanted to conclude with a good quote that I heard that Dr. Gabrielle Lyon say, um, that I thought was just really cool. So I want to leave y'all with that quote to finish out today. And next week, we're going to cover the final pillar, slash, like I said, I may split the last pillar. The next one's movement, your movement goals. May add the extra pillar, have it separate really of recovery, but I may loop them in the same one. So we'll see. But the next pillar next week is going to be our movement goals. So whether that's resistance training, cardio activities, things like that. So we're going to approach that pillar next week. But so here's our final quote for today. And then I'll hope you guys have a great rest of your week and I'll catch you on the next one. But here's our quote. Muscle is the organ of longevity. Strength is a responsibility, not a luxury. Aging is inevitable, but weakness is a choice. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. Let's go after it, guys. Catch you next week.